Welcome to EVTN News. We identify as the #1 trusted news source of the Vatican. All right. Um, Before I get started, I'd like to ask a question, and this is for anyone really. Do any of you know anything that's going on at the Institute of Christ the King in Chicago? You know that recently the Institute they posted in their bulletin for it would be last weekend. They posted about how the um, the masses would all be in Latin. That was what they advertised as all Latin masses. So I wonder what happened this weekend. Did they get the exemption from the archdiocese, because that would seem to go against what the archdiocese is promoting? And this week I noticed that they didn't post this past weekend's bulletin on their website. So who knows what happened? We have a lot of news stories today, and I just want to start out with a series of quotes from Pope Francis. And these are just, kind of unbelievable. If you've been paying attention, they're not really unbelievable, but it's still, if you look at it in the perspective of like a Catholic saying this, and much less a Catholic Pope, then who knows? Reporting Institute in Chicago celebrated TLM. Okay, I don't know if there's any trouble or not with that. We'll see. I don't know the full story. Okay, Pope Francis. He said. Here's a quote. He said, "Although some may see tax agencies as an entity that puts hands in their pockets, tax collection is really a sign of legality and justice." The Pope said January 31st during a meeting with a delegation from Italy's revenue agency. Taxation must favor the redistribution of wealth, protecting the dignity of the poor and the least, who always risk being crushed by the powerful. Taxation, when it is just, is a function of the common good. So Pope Francis, he supports socialism. These quotes are all from this week. It's not. It's just recent quotes. Protester on the February 2nd general audience of Pope Francis, and there was a interruption by a protester who wasn't wearing anything over his face. And so he said, "This is not the Church of God." The man, who was not immediately identified but spoke in English, was soon escorted out of the Vatican's Pope Paul VI audience hall. While the exact nature of his protest was unclear, Pope Francis responded by offering his prayers for the individual. Oh, prayers, yeah. Or a few words towards the individual. A few minutes ago, we heard from a man who was screaming, shouting, who had some kind of problem, Francis said at the conclusion of his hour-long greeting to pilgrims from around the globe. Didn't seem like it. It looked pretty empty to me based on the photos. I don't know if it is physical, psychological, or spiritual, but he is a brother of ours who has a problem. I'd like to finish by praying for him, our brother who is suffering, poor man. If he's yelling, it is because he is suffering, has some problem. Don't be deaf to the needs of this man. Okay, so anyone who disagrees with Pope Francis is apparently mentally ill. Darn. If I identify as mentally ill, do I get more money from the government? Pope Francis presented at the February 2nd Candle Mass a renewed vision of consecrated life. He said, "We cannot pretend to see these signs continue as if nothing has happened, repeating the same old things, drag ourselves through inertia into the forms of the past, and be paralyzed by fear of change." He said that in the Council Church, the temptation is to go backwards out of security, out of fear, and try to preserve the founding Vatican II charism. Was this the intention of the Council Fathers? I don't know. Certainly seems to be the case. In an interview on Italian television, Pope Francis said, "The popes who came before me were saints, but I'm not so saintly. I can't manage it. That's why I live in Santa Marta." Wow. Okay. So what does this even mean? Remember, I think it's the Vatican guest house, and he lived in the Vatican guest house, and people said, "Oh, he's so humble. Why did he decide to live there?" I just asked the questions. And then remember the apostate comments. Taylor Marshall talked about this. Here's a quote. He said, "Let's think about those who have denied the faith, who are apostates, who are the persecutors of the church, who have denied their baptism. Are these also at home? Yes, these too. The blasphemers, all of them. We are brothers. This is the communion of saints." So the blasphemers, the apostates, are in the communion of saints. There's a reasonable hope that all are saved. Then why is there such a war against the Latin Mass? These apostates, heretics, blasphemers, if they're all in the communion of saints, then why would you be so concerned about those of us who attend the Mass of all time? Pope Francis was on a talk show, an Italian talk show. It was Sunday night. Francis appeared at Fabio Fazio's talk show Che Tempo Che Fa, which is part of the state TV Rai 3. And there are Italian media that praised him. Now, this show was supposedly live. Libro Quotidiano, an Italian website, noticed that Francis' wristwatch read 5 o'clock, and 2 minutes later, 5:30, showing that the first live TV interview with the Pope in history was not only not live, but also edited. Anyway, I don't care about that. What we care about is the comments. So these Italian journalists, they said, in regards to Pope Francis, he is an extraordinary revolutionary, a saint of men among wolves, much disliked, the last socialist, a great lonely man. Fazio called Francis at the end a light for men, an always burning light. And so, what did Jesus say in the gospel about how he would be hated by the world? If they persecute me, they will persecute you also. Doesn't seem to be the case. Doesn't seem to be the case here. All right, let's move on to the real news. I wanted to enlighten your day a little bit. The Archdiocese of St. Louis will begin a parish consolidation project. They're going to strengthen parishes by merging them. This is a common theme that we've been hearing time and time again in different dioceses, and it's coming to a diocese near you. So, Archbishop Mitchell Rosansky is the Archbishop of St. Louis. And remember, he was the one who suggested that nurses, he wanted to give nurses the power to administer extreme unction to people in hospitals because of the virus. And that's not Catholic. He said, "We will assess every aspect of our archdiocese and make the necessary adjustments to our ministries and supporting structures to reflect the needs of our communities in the next century." This initiative is called All Things New. You're going to have a you're going to have a new priest who's going to cover 4 or 5 parishes. We anticipate that these adjustments will be the most sweeping changes that the Archdiocese has witnessed in its history. Yeah. The model that fulfilled its mission in growing and evangelizing the church during the last century has become archaic. I wouldn't refer to the last century, maybe the last 50 years. I think he's really looking at the wrong time frame. So eventually, basically what this means is there is a merger of parishes and then some will close. They will close some of them eventually, because if you're having one mass at a church, what's the cost of keeping it open, and what are the donations like? I would imagine not very good. That's why they need the government money. And that's why they need that immigration money. Arlington, Virginia will move there. I won't personally move there, but we'll move there in the video. Hope to clarify that. Nearly 2,800 supporters of the traditional Latin Mass have signed a petition addressed to Bishop Michael Burbidge of Arlington. Remember, he had restrictions. The document asks Burbidge to lift the restrictions he recently imposed on the celebration of the Old Rite sacraments. So, okay, that's good. I mean, they got a lot of Got a lot of supporters on their petition, but as you all know, I mean, you've been watching this channel. I don't know how long you've been watching this channel, but as many of you know, petitions don't do anything. And if I don't know, is Bishop Burbage a bad bishop? Well, if he's putting restrictions on the practice of the Catholic faith, as as our ancestors celebrated it, then certainly there's something wrong. Petitions don't do anything. Just ask Archbishop Gomez. See what happened. Google that. Moving to Las Vegas. Bishop George Thomas said, if a politician from the Diocese of Las Vegas finds himself or herself at odds with the Church's teaching on the sacredness of human life, I ask him or her to voluntarily to refrain from the reception of Holy Communion while holding public office. I place the onus of that decision upon the individual politician's shoulders and not on the backs of pastors or Eucharistic ministers. Well, you shouldn't put anything on the backs of Eucharistic ministers because they shouldn't exist. But this is a good first step if you plan on implementing a policy gradually where you're going to ban, apostates and blasphemers and heretics from receiving Holy Communion. But they are part of the communion of saints, so maybe that's not a pastoral approach, right? Speaking of pastoral, the Diocese of Phoenix, Arizona announced that baptisms performed by Eudist Father Andres Arango, who later became a Phoenix diocesan priest, were all invalid. When baptizing in English and Spanish, Arango was using the formula, "We baptize you." People just don't get it. How many more? So good on the Diocese of Phoenix for actually saying this, releasing this information, because how many dioceses, how many bishops have had this information brought to their attention and have covered it up? Was your baptism valid? Hope so. We hope so. All right. Oh, speaking of apostates, Luxembourg Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich, a Jesuit who leads the Pan-European Catholic Bishops' Conference, expressed his support for LMNOP relationships. What do you know, a Jesuit supporting LMNOP, the rainbow? He said he considered the Church's assessment of LMNOP relationships as sinful to be wrong. Here's a quote, I believe the sociological scientific foundation of this teaching is no longer correct. So there is no disorder. And you're not Catholic. Divorced and remarried people were also active in the church in the Archdiocese of Luxembourg, said Hollerich. I can't kick them out, he said. They would become unemployed. How can such a thing be Christian? Tolerance, right? No, acceptance. We have to accept their lifestyle. All right, moving on. Let's follow the rainbow to Bishop Stowe. There's some breaking news coming up too, but Bishop Stowe bans the Reverent Novus Ordo. I'm gonna read a few clips here, and this is on Twitter, so I gotta kind of take a look here and see what he has to say. He said, Traditionis Custodes, one of the principles of the latest iteration of the General Instruction on the Roman Missal is that the liturgy is not the private property of the priest celebrant, but celebrated for the good of the whole church. Okay. It is not the prerogative of the priest celebrant to impose personal tastes or preferences upon the celebration of the Mass, although there are places within the liturgy where the rubrics permit some variation at the discretion of the celebrant. So here he is, he's saying basically, the Novus Ordo is as I intend it, not as, not as how it's written, but as I intend it, because he said, you shouldn't have imposed your personal preferences, but there is some options for variation. So what's the variation? Rainbows. What does he want to restrict? Ad orientem. Okay. As of the date of the issuance of Traditionis Custodes, Father Mark Fisher is the only priest in the diocese authorized to celebrate according to the Missal of 1962. No other priest has requested authorization to do so. And who's Father Fisher? Oh, the FSSP. He said, I met with him, and he assures me that as a member of that institute, he's committed to the unity of the church, and that as a community, Regina Pacis, which is the FSSP parish, does not deny the legitimacy of validity of post-Vatican II liturgies. He agreed to discontinue the celebration of the preconciliar Mass at St. Peter's downtown. So, this FSSP priest, did he really have any options? No, he did not. Bishop Stowe told him. I'm assuming here. But you know what? What are the chances I'm right? 99.9%. Because if Father Fisher if it was up to him, he would continue to celebrate the Latin Mass at this other parish too. There's no doubt in my mind, because these priests, they want to bring the Latin Mass to the faithful. He said, as of Ash Wednesday this year, there will be no ad orientem celebrations of the Mass in congregations. He said, I am afraid, let's see here. I don't know what he's talking about in Article 2, the third edition of the Roman Missal. Okay, he said that the letter addressed the bishops which accompanied the motu proprio. Which accompanied the motu proprio in December. It also states, I ask you to be vigilant in ensuring that every liturgy be celebrated with decorum. No, the motu proprio of July, sorry. Celebrated with decorum and fidelity to liturgical books promulgated after the Second Vatican Council, without the eccentricities that can easily denigrate into abuses. I am afraid that such eccentricities occur throughout the diocese, and within that description, I would include the addition of rites and gestures that are not included in the Roman Missal. Example, priests and ministers kneeling at the foot of the altar during the introductory rites, the alteration of the text of the Eucharistic prayer by the celebrant, the use of vesture previously discontinued, example, berettas and maniples, that's Latin Mass stuff, and unauthorized adaptations on the posture for receiving communion, in parentheses, kneeling at the communion rail. Wow. Of more concern is the celebration of the Mass ad orientem, especially when done because of the preference of the priest celebrant. So Bishop Stowe completely, this is completely modernist. I mean, Bishop Stowe, I've said it many times, he doesn't represent the Catholic faith. In fact, he opposes it. When people talk about like anti-pope, what about an anti-bishop? That's what they got in Lexington, Kentucky. As of Ash Wednesday of this year, there will be no ad orientem celebrations of the Mass. There you go. So your Reverent Novus Ordo is banned in Lexington. He said the norm for reception of communion is to be standing. However, communion is not to be denied to individuals who insist on kneeling to receive. So there you go. I mean, he didn't ban. So people said he banned communion on the tongue. No, he didn't. I think we have to be very clear. We can't misrepresent any of this stuff. But also, Bishop Stowe, is he misrepresenting the Catholic faith? Absolutely. So the celebration of the liturgy will continue to be celebrated. Wow, great English. You have to, whoever wrote this, that was... Anyway, the celebration of liturgy will continue to be celebrated with a diversity of sacred music, expressions that are unique to language and ethnic groups, the layout and the structure of the place of worship, and other minor variations in practice that are foreseen by the liturgical books. What a clown. Absolute clown. Clown church, clown bishop, clown mass. The clown mass is fitting for all of this. Okay. Let's move on. I gotta get back to where I was at. Oh, so the newest announcement, this was actually, I was passed along this information like 15 minutes before the start of the show. There's a new Archbishop of Louisville, and it's not Stowe. So congratulations, people of Louisville. I'll bet you breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief. It is Bishop Shelton Faber. He will soon be announced as the new Archbishop. He has been the Bishop of Houma Thibodaux, Louisiana, since 2013. He chairs the U.S. Bishops Ad Hoc Committee Against Racism. Oh boy. So no surprise he's being named Archbishop. He's 58 years old. So super young, actually about the age of Stowe. For months, speculation had circulated amongst the clergy of the archdiocese about who the next archbishop would be, with Stowe and Bishop Joseph Bambera of Scranton, Pennsylvania, the two names that were commonly mentioned among the priests in the region. A Vatican official close to the congregation for bishops told the Pillar, this was reported by the Pillar, that Stowe was not considered in Rome a plausible candidate for the job. Here's the quote from the official. The focus was on candidates who could foster communion in the archdiocese and the province from the beginning. No surprise, Stowe was not one of them. Very surprised the Vatican thought this. I'm very surprised the Vatican thought that Stowe wouldn't foster unity in the diocese, in the archdiocese. I mean, he doesn't foster unity, but to the modernists, the unity is unity with modernism, unity with anti-Catholic ideas. Here's how to close your Catholic school. In the Archdiocese of Washington, I'll read you this. The mayor, there was a letter. The mayor of the District of Columbia recently passed a mayor's order, which went into effect November 2021. The order requires adults who are regular in school and student athletes to be fully jabbed. In December, the City Council of the District of Columbia approved the student jab mandate to be enforced in the 2022-23 school year. So, all students in the Archdiocesan Catholic schools shall be jabbed in accordance with the jab requirements and the guidelines of the Archdiocese of Washington, because Catholic moral teaching urges parents, guardians to jab their children against serious infectious diseases with the grave risk of non-jab to other children. Given the grave risk of non-jab to other children, pregnant women, and population as a whole. Exemptions are provided on a temporary basis to those applicants with a physician documented medical reason. The Archdiocese of Washington will consider exemptions based on the assertion of a serious moral objection as a matter of conscience to certain jabs. So that's one way to close your Catholic school. Of course, how many of those parents, how many Catholics send their kids to these rotten schools? Awful schools. Cardinal Gregory, what a joke. Virus police invaded an Australia mass. There's an Australian cop who invaded a Catholic mass looking for people who didn't cover their faces, and the bishop supported this action. Pathetic. Resign. All these rotten bishops need to resign. I don't care if we don't have any bishops left. We can find them. We'll find them in the traditionalist orders, and we'd actually have the Catholic faith. Instead, we have the virus religion, the counter church. There's a new auxiliary bishop in New York, Father Joseph Esfilat was named auxiliary bishop of New York. He'll be the youngest bishop in the United States, age 45. He launched a podcast and YouTube series called Sainthood in the City in 2021. In a video promoting the launch, Esfilat, who goes by Father J, said that the podcast would include discussions on faith, music, sports, fashion, and pop culture. How relevant. He said, we're going to talk about Pop Smoke, we're going to talk about Kanye, we're going to talk about Kim Kardashian, we're going to talk about everything under the sun and Cardi B. Wow. He was a featured speaker at Steubenville youth conferences. He said that he loves ministering the sacraments. probably administering. This was in Catholic News Agency. Playing softball, he likes playing softball and basketball, writing poetry, and rapping. All right, so he's age 45. If you're talking about the youth, he's about the age of their parents. That's really not relevant. For me, I'm probably closer. If I were to teach a youth group, I'm closer to the age of the parents than I am to the students. So that's just a thought, right? I can't be relevant. I'm not going to be relevant to the youths. I mean, these priests, and I don't know. I don't know anything about this guy, but in general, these priests are saying we need to do things that are relevant. Well, guess what? You're not relevant. Even people in their 20s, the youth group leaders, some of them are just like some of the people in the youth group. Are they relevant? Are these people in their 20s even relevant to the people that go to youth group? I don't know. It's not about relevance. The Catholic faith is relevant to every society. Moving on to Ecclesia Dei. So this was posted on Gloria TV. It's an interesting website. You should check it out. They kind of say what they pretty opinionated, kind of like me, you know. But I think their opinions are a little bit more upfront. The Vatican will subject Ecclesia Dei institutes such as Fraternity of St. Peter to the same draconic laws imposed on diocesan clergy and will attempt to force them into the Novus Ordo. This will happen in March. I reported it will happen on around Ash Wednesday. This was reported by summorum-pontificum.de. It's probably Germany, I think that's the website. That's the .com for Germany, I think. An attempt will be made to impose on them the Chicago rule that on the first Sunday of the month, the Mass must be presided in the Novus Ordo, at least for their public apostolates. Whether this will also apply to the internal use and how this would be possible has not yet been decided. Decided or disclosed. I think that's a big difference in language, but I think they have a clear idea of what they want. And it's going to happen. So, do you have your game plan? What's going to happen to your parish, and what are you going to do about it? You got a month. Figure it out. Anejo, Africa, Bishop Isaac Jogs Gaglo of Togo laicized Father Joseph Basatome for joining a pagan African religion. Gaglo writes in a February 2nd message that he summoned Basatome after learning that he was invoking pagan deities and indulging in syncretic and scandalous practices. Basatome admitted having joined a group called African Renaissance. The bishop ordered him to leave the group and spend a period of time in a monastery in the mountains. But Basatome refused and asked to be defrocked. He had unfortunately well, the bishop's a good bishop, it seems like. He seems like he, understands the laws of the Catholic faith, the rules of the Catholic faith. This bishop does deviate from one of the popes in Rome, who encourages the worship of pagan idols such as Pachamama. Over to Iowa. Bishop Thomas Zinkula of Davenport, Iowa, released a letter which he talked about how awesome Vatican II is, and just a lot of Vatican II praise. And I'm just going to read one of the quotes here. He said, "I am calling my brother priests and deacons to a double challenge. First, I ask you to accompany our brothers and sisters whose faith lives have been enriched by the preconciliar liturgy, and all Catholics, towards a growing appreciation of the Reformed liturgy. Second, I ask you to remember that one way of doing so is to celebrate the Reformed liturgy worthily and well, by being attentive to the ars celebrandi, the art of celebration, and to the community. Please allow for silence and be reverent before the mystery that we are called to serve." Okay, so the second point, I mean, it's like Vatican II garbage, but it's interesting how he calls it the Reformed liturgy. It's also Reformed Protestants. The first point, though, I ask you to accompany our brothers and sisters towards a growing appreciation of the Reformed liturgy. I will say, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you go to the Latin Mass, you can see what it's all about. And then all right, so now we'll walk down the German synodal path. German synodal path is overgrown with weeds. Yeah, but a lot of people are on it. German Synod voted on Saturday to concoct a rite of blessing for LMNOP and adulterers and allow these groups to do paid work for the church. This is on Gloria TV. The vote was 161 yes, 31 no, and 11 abstained. So an overwhelming majority. Here's some quotes. Katrina Norpoth, Catholic Youth Organization, BDKJ. She said it is wrong to consider LMNOP as a reason for the abuse scandal. And she is wrong. But this is a Catholic youth organization. So let's tell youth they can do whatever they want and they can identify as whatever they want. And everything's great. Even though St. Paul preaches against it, don't worry, St. Paul was rigid. And rigidity is the greatest sin in the modern church. Munich's Cardinal Marx on a future reevaluation of LMNOP in the Catechism. He says, the Catechism is not the Quran, it is always being changed. Okay. Presiding Bishop Batzing, he said, we don't mainly produce texts, but we change the church's concrete actions. And one cannot simply go on with the church's sexual morality because it has humiliated, hurt, and excluded far too many people. Bishop Brode of Osnabrück, he said, we now have a unique opportunity to bring these questions into the Synod of Synods. So, a lot of basically the German Synod is going on as everyone expected, and without much comment from the Vatican. I'm going to get to the comments here. Let's see what everyone has to say. Thank you, Mimi. The Left Coast, Portland, Oregon, Archbishop Sample says the TLM stays. There you go. Thank you, Archbishop Sample. Canons Regular St. John Cantus celebrated Novus Ordo ad Orientem in Latin on the first Sunday. Yeah, but they were banned from saying the Latin Mass on the first Sunday. How about complicit clergy reporting Catholic Charities financing human trafficking of illegal immigrants? Look, if you've been following this channel, I talked about this years ago. I mean, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but gotta watch the channel. Gotta watch this channel. I actually did my own personal research where Catholic Charities, I proved based on financial statements that Catholic Charities receives over $1 billion a year from the U.S. government for immigration services, mostly immigration services. This was my own personal research. I think the Associated Press reported they receive more than $2 billion a year. I couldn't prove that though, because a lot of the diocese, most of Catholic Charities branches didn't post their financial statements. Over half of them didn't post them. And you can take a look at my video. I mean, search for it. It's Catholic Charities. The Catholic charity that receives over $1 billion from the U.S. government. It's actually very surprising. And because Catholic Charities itself is by diocese, they can get away with that a lot easier. But group them all together and $1 billion. Okay, yeah, so our tax dollars are going to Catholic Charities. Eucharistic ministers should not exist, yeah. What will the FSSP priests do when the Pope forces them to say the new rite? No idea. I think some will resist, but who knows. Pastor of Winchester, Virginia Parish, Sacred Heart, said they will be moving the Sunday TLM, which was held at 12:30 to earlier in the day, at another suitable location. Okay, where? Well, 12:30, I mean, moving it earlier, that's good. Romans, the parishioners in my church are asked to participate in a synodal listening session I guess try to stand up for the TLM even though the Pope has made his mind up. I want to talk about this later in the week. Stay tuned. Will the FSSP cave in and say the new right or refuse and uphold fraternity constitution? I don't know. We are also called to keep up with or step up offerings tithes to make it known to the diocese that upon absence of TLM, a good chunk of dollars will be noticed. If you know what I mean. No, don't donate money that'll go to the diocese though. I mean, until the FSSP is going to stand up, don't do it. Sorry. I didn't watch Return to Traditions video, but apparently, let's see, Living Purgatory likes it. Go ahead and check it out and see what you think. Slow Roasted Marshmallow. Attended Mount St. Mary's College in the 90s. Friends with seminarians who became priests. Ronald Escalante was removed from being pastor in Virginia, falsely accused he did the TLM. Yeah, that kind of happens sometimes. My comment on Catholic Charities dealt with the Pope commenting on the taxation issue. Oh, well, there you go. And I wasn't trying to be critical or anything. I just wanted to say, hey, like, you know, I think Taylor Marshall posted something about that. And let's see. Yeah, Taylor Marshall posted something about that. And I think that Catholic Charity, I mean, 1 billion, you know, it's crazy. $1 billion from the US government. A lot of these organizations are big money organizations. And my, like, finance is my expertise. You might be surprised to know that no, no, a news broadcaster is not my expertise. I'm just telling you that right now. You're going to be shocked to find that out. I'm sure you are, but no, my expertise is finances, and I like to look at financial statements and tax forms. So I'd like to do a little bit more research. I just don't have a lot of time. It's hard for me to do this. And the thing with financial research, people don't care. My videos where I post my financial research they're probably my best videos in my opinion, but they get the least views out of any of my videos. So what does that mean? I don't know. But there's some good stuff. Watch them. All right. This has been EVTN News. Thank you so much for watching. We are the laity and Living Purgatory. Restoring tradition covered LA bishops getting more dollars to keep their... I gotta look into that. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. This has been EVTN News. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.